Hello everyone, my name is Sasha. Today I'm at the Polyphony Digital studio, the renowned makers of the PlayStation game titled Gran Turismo. Soon there will be a historic race taking place here between an AI agent developed by Sony AI called Gran Turismo Sophy and GT top drivers, including the current world champion. I think many of you are familiar with the matches between AI and humans playing chess, shogi, and Go, which have been taking place over the last 2 decades. Sony AI, a Sony Group company, has been working on an AI agent that's able to navigate the complexity of a racing game. Gran Turismo Sophy is an AI agent that has mastered the speed and techniques equivalent to that of the world's top drivers in a highly sophisticated racing environment which fully models real-world physics. Before today's event, Gran Turismo Sophy competed against Igor Fraga of Brazil, Emily Jones of Australia, and Valerio Gallo from Italy in a series of time trial matches and has won against all 3 drivers. Today, Team Gran Turismo Sophy will race against Team Gran Turismo top drivers in the same format as the FIA-certified Gran Turismo Championships. I have commentated many Gran Turismo races, but I'm particularly looking forward to today's race. So, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's exciting event, Race Together 2021, the race with AI agent Gran Turismo Sophy. それではここからはソニー AI ミカエルさんとポリフォニーデジタル山内さんを交えてお話を伺っていきたいと思います。お二方どうぞ Please welcome。よろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。
まずはですね、プロジェクトがいろいろ行われている上での今日の位置づけについて伺っていきたいと思うんですけれども、ミカエルさん、今日はどんな位置づけなんでしょうか。
So Gran Turismo is really a very special challenge for AI algorithms. There are really 3 levels that AI algorithms have to conquer or master in order to be able to compete at this really high level. There is the physics. So agents need to really master the physics, right? The force, the balance of the car, the braking points, the aerodynamics. So this is the first level. But then, of course, racing involves other opponents, right? And so you need to anticipate their behavior and you need to really have excellent tactics and maneuvers as well. And then, of course, the race, it goes over multiple laps. And so you need a strategy in order to win over time. And so we do not really have AI algorithms today that can solve this kind of really big puzzle. And so today we hope that our AI agents can race competitively with the pro players, with the top players in this game.
山内さんはいかがですか今回、このポリフォニーサイドとしては。
初めて今回ワールドツアーのトップドライバーと、グランツーリスモソフィー AI との対戦ということになるわけですけれども、僕はねどちらが、勝ってもどちらが負けてもね皆さんにAI という存在がどういう存在なのかどういう可能性を秘めているのかってことが分かればいいなと思ってます。
はいね、この後のレースが楽しみですが、ミカエルさんそれで、今お話もあったんですけど、ソニー AI としてこのポリフォニーデジタルとコラボした理由、は何なのか教えていただけますか。
And each of these partners obviously brings a different perspective on the project. So PDI really brings the deep knowledge and the passion and the attention to detail for actually building the best racing simulator that we have. And so without PDI, basically this project is impossible. But AI today also needs a lot of resources, and the PlayStation Cloud Gaming Unit basically brought, access to a huge cluster of massively parallel PlayStations that we can use to train these agents. But then, of course, we also need AI experts, right? And this is the part that Sony AI brings. And I'm really happy because Sony AI is a very new organization, and we were able to really bring together a world-class team of AI experts. If we bring together the passion for racing and gaming, with the technology that exists in Sony and the technology that we can develop with the best experts we have, I think we can really truly achieve amazing things.
山内さんはお話がね来たということですけれども、その中でこれ一緒にやってみようと思ったというかコラボ しようって決めたのはなぜでしょう。
はい、僕らもねもともと AI のテクノロジーにはすごく興味があって。ソニー AI の皆さんからねそのお話が来た時には真っ先にこれは一緒にプロジェクトをやろうと思ったんですね。でその理由というのは何かというとAI について研究することというのは AI の研究を通じて 人間とは何かっていうことを理解していくっていうプロセスなんですね。ですから僕はねやっぱり AI の研究を通じて人間とは何かっていうね問いにこう向かいたいっていうものすごい好奇心があって、それが今日のねまでつながっているっていうことですね。
なるほど。 AI を見ると人間がわかると。
はい、
面白いですね。今日は何がわかるのか。そこで気になる今日のこの後のレースなんですけれども、三上さん今日のレースへの期待はどんなところにありますか？
All of this technology is built to bring out the best in the humans, to really push people to the limit, and also kind of bring new maneuvers, new tactics, and kind of new ways of kind of competing into this race. And I think that's really what we're looking for, is looking for kind of new things that we haven't seen before in racing, and that together the humans and the AI can bring out in this kind of competitive scenario.
山内さんはいかがですか？
はい、僕ら過去3年間、スポーツとは何かっていうことを考え続けてきました。でその答えはまだ出ていないんですね。でスポーツとは何かというのは先ほど申し上げた、人間とは何かっていう問いと深くつながっているところがあって、今日、ソフィ AI と、グランツーリスモのトップドライバーが、戦って、いうことでねそれを通じてスポーツとは何か、その向こう側にある人間とは何かっていうことをドライバーの皆さんにももちろん僕らにもあるいはこの映像を見ている皆さんにもね何かをこう感じ取っていただけたら人間が勝とうがあるいはソフィ AI が勝とうが僕としては成功するんじゃないかなっていうふうに思ってます。
これからレースが行われるわけですが、勝負はもちろんですが果たしてどんなハイレベルな勝負が行われてまたどんな限界突破があるのか楽しみにしたいと思います。三上さん、山内さん、どうもありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
Thank you.
Thank you. さあそれでは、今回のレースを戦うチームグランツーリズモトップドライバーズの皆さんをご紹介してまいりましょう。宮園拓馬選手、山中智明選手、国分亮太選手、そして劉翔太郎選手です。どうぞ。よろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。
お願いします。
お願いします。
では一言ずつ意気込みを聞いていきたいというふうに思いますけれども、宮園選手からいきましょう。
はい。当然 AI 早いと思うんですけど、できるだけ、食らいつけるように頑張りたいですし、あとは、レースにおいては人間と、同じようにいいバトルができればいいなというふうに思います。
はい、
はい、
山中選手はどうでしょう。
そうですね、AI と戦うっていうことで、未知との遭遇になると思うんですけど、だから人間側がどんなレースをできるのかっていうのを改めて AI と勝負していろいろと表現できたらいいなと思っているので、勝負としてはもちろん勝ちたいなと思ってます。
頑張ってください。国分選手。
はい、まず AI は本当に速いと思いますが、人間陣営がいかに食らいつけるかということにまず期待していて、少しでもいいバトルができたらいいなと思っています。
はい、劉選手は。
はい、僕も宮園さんと国分さんがおっしゃったように非常に AI は速いと思うので、一体どういう走りをしたらそういう速い走りができるのかというのを知った上でどういうレース展開に持ち込めるかっていうのに、集中して取り組みたいと思います。
はい、まさにさっき話が出ていた AI の走りを学ぶことによって人間の限界も突破できるかもしれないというね、そんな新たな本当に記念すべき日になるかもしれません。それではチームグランツーリズモトップドライバーズの皆さん、レースのスタンバイをお願いいたします。それでは続きましてチームグランツーリズモソフィの皆さんでございます。チームグランツーリズモソフィを代表してソニー AI 川本さん、瀬能さんにお話を伺っていきたいと思います。どうぞ。お二方どうぞよろしくお願いします。川本さん、まずは今日の意気込みを教えてください。
今日はやっぱり楽しいレースができるといいなと思ってます。 AI がこういう形でのエンターテインメントを新しい形で提供できるとか、プレイヤーの方にインスピレーションを与えるとかがぜひ見たいですね。
瀬能さんは。
そうですね、スイスのみんなとアメリカのみんなと一緒に作り上げてきた AI なので、まあ、素晴らしいレースになることを期待してます。
ぶっちゃけ自信あるんですか？
もう絶対勝てると思ってます、
楽勝。
まあ楽勝ですね。そう行きたいと思います。
今ヘッドホンで聞こえてないんでね。聞こえてる。楽勝って言われてますけど大丈夫ですか？そうはいかないよって顔で見てますけど、はい、じゃあ素晴らしい勝負を楽しみにしたいと思います。では、チームグランツーリスモソフィーの皆さんもレースのスタンバイお願いいたします。
Well, welcome along everybody to Race Together 2021, the inaugural event, seeing some of our top drivers within Gran Turismo versus the fantastic Sophy AI system which has been developed. We're looking forward to seeing how they will get on, and we'll be explaining a bit more about it in depth as the show progresses on. But we've got 4 drivers that are going to be competing from our top GT driver team, and then 4 of our Sophy AI competitors as well will be out on track. And there's lots of rules and such like to consider over the course of this one. You can see on your screen there now 4 Sophy drivers, 4 of the top Gran Turismo drivers as well. In terms of qualifying, this is how it's going to work. So essentially 1 driver will be nominated from the top Gran Turismo drivers, 1 AI will be nominated from Gran Turismo Sophy. They will then go head to head out on track to set a lap time, and essentially then whoever qualifies fastest means that group will then start in the odd positions. Whoever qualifies second quickest will then start in the even positions. You can see here the race rundown as well. So in the first race, we're going to be at the Dragon Trail Seaside Circuit in the N500 cars. Looking forward to seeing how the drivers are going to fare over the course of that race. In the second race, we're at the Lago Maggiore GP circuit in the Group 3 cars. The Porsche 911 RSR is going to be the machine for the drivers to contend with. And in the third race, our grand final is at the Circuit de la Sarthe at the circuit where the 24 Hours of Le Mans is hosted in the Red Bull X 2019. So you can see our drivers then getting ready to go out on the circuit. This is going to be a very interesting technological exercise and race for our drivers. We heard, of course, just how excited they are to get out on track, and I'm really keen to see how they are going to fare over the course of this one against the GT Sophy AI system. You can see them here just getting the lap times in and practicing out on this Dragon Trail Seaside Circuit. Then we'll have a driver nominated for qualifying, and we'll get ready to get this one underway. But first of all, it's probably a good idea for us to have a look at the course the drivers are going to be competing on for the first race a bit more in depth. Here it is, the Dragon Trail Seaside Circuit. This is a fictional track within Gran Turismo Sport, fictionally based within Croatia. And you can see here, it's basically a big triangle, 5.2 kilometers long. 3 sectors we break it up into. Prime overtaking opportunities, turn 12 and turn 17, as well as turn 2 actually as well, the left-hander right after the flat-out turn 1, so keep an eye out for any moves being made there. You can see the elevation on your screen now. That's 38 metres for the drivers from the top of the circuit to the bottom. So not too much to consider, but very keen to see how these drivers are going to be faring over the course then of this race. So then, we had a qualifying session for our drivers, of course, and we elected one of the drivers to go out from our top Gran Turismo team. That was Ryu, as you can see, out on track here. He went up against the AI, the GT AI of Sophy Bordeaux, and let's see how Shitaru Ryu would fare, the 20-year-old from the Fukuoka prefecture in Nakagawa City. You can see him here focusing and practicing. And this is what the lap times look like out on track as we have a look at some highlights then for qualifying ahead of race 1. So then, at the end of that qualifying session, it does mean that the GT Sophy AI will line up on the odd positions on the grid. It'll be our top Gran Turismo drivers who line up on the even positions on the grid. Shitaru Ryu just over a second slower than Sophie Bordeaux, the AI driver that was quickest in that qualifying session. You can see here over the course of this one just how committed the AI was going through this sector here. Look at that, minimal movements of the steering wheel, very, very linear throttle inputs as they flick it through there, and just the amount of corner speed that they were able to take through these S-bends was really what set them apart from Ryu's time. And of course, as I said earlier on, this is a fantastic technological exercise for the drivers to also be able to learn where they can gain time as well. Ryu did put in a fantastically quick lap over the course of that one. Very impressive. You can see him here riding the curves and using every inch of the track, but it wasn't quite enough to be able to overhaul Bordeaux and the GT Sophy AI system to qualify on pole position. You can see as they came towards the timing line, there went the time, and it was 1.1 seconds slower eventually than Bordeaux as we get ready to go into race one. The Dragon Trail Seaside Circuit plays host to race one in our Race Together 2021 event, the GT Sophy AI versus our top Gran Turismo drivers. And here is how the grid lines up for the first race. It's Sophie Bordeaux who starts on pole position. Alongside them on the front row is the first of our professional drivers, Tomoaki Yamanaka, lines up P2. Then it is Sophie Violette in P3 at the head of the second row of the grid. Shitaru Ryu, who tried his best to get the better of the AI in that qualifying session, wasn't quite enough to overhaul him. He starts P4 with Ver starting in P5 on the grid. Then it's Ryota Kokubun who lines up P6, the fast-charging Japanese driver. Sophie Noir lines up in P7 on the grid. And then next up, it is Takuma Miyazono, the 2021 Nations Cup champion, the triple champion from 2020. So then a rolling start for our drivers, 4 laps here at the Dragon Trail Seaside Circuit. What is going to happen down towards that braking zone of turn 2? Well, we're about to find out then for our drivers. No fuel to worry about, no tyre consumption there either. And here we are ready to go. Sport soft tyres available for the drivers, as you can see. So Race Together 2021 is underway. It's Sophie Bordeaux that leads the field over the timing line, followed by Takuma Miyazono, followed by Sophie Violette. You can see the AI there popping into the slipstream as well as the professional drivers coming down in towards turn number 1. We go the right-handed kick. No moves being made through there, but the heavy braking zone of turn 2 could prove to be where we see moves being made. And look at Tomoaki Yamanaka having a look up the inside of Bordeaux. Bordeaux runs it a little bit wide there as Ryu has got himself up into 3rd position then ahead of Violette. Takuma Miyazono also making ground. He's up into P6 as they come down the bottom of the hill. Yamanaka having another look up the inside of Sophie Bordeaux into the right-hander, but here comes Ryu down the inside of Yamanaka. Not quite through there. Tried to make the move stick, but he was just a little bit too little too late. So now there is a big split between the top AI, which is Sophie Bordeaux, and then Yamanaka, Ryu, Kokubun, Miyazono, our top Gran Turismo drivers in 2nd down to 5th place respectively. And then it is the AI as we ride on board through these ever-changing S-bends with Sophie Violette for a brief moment. You can see a snap of oversteer there for her as they come down the hill and in towards the hairpin bend then. And look at the gap that Bordeaux is already putting out. You can see them really riding the curb there on the outside as Violette tries to attack then on the back of Takuma Miyazono, trying to go the long way around the outside into the hairpin. Not quite an opportunity to present itself there for Violette, and they could come under pressure from Sophie Noir here into the chicane. And thinking better of it, I'm not surprised going through those series of corners at all, because it's very much one at a time through this section of the circuit then. So coming through into the tunnel we go for the first time at the end then of this first lap we're coming to now, and instead of attacking the top Gran Turismo drivers, it's the 2 AIs that are battling amongst one another. And there is Violette defending from Sophie Noir on the inside, runs it wide on the outside. That allows Noir to pull alongside on the corner exit, and they now go side by side almost down the start-finish straight. Violette managed to get a good bit of traction out of that final corner, and as they come across the timing line to start the second lap then here at the Dragon Trail Seaside Circuit, let's see how this is all going to play out. Into the braking zone of turn 2 we go. Violette defends then from Noir for now. On board we ride here with Takuma Miyazono, who sits in P5. Out of the exit of turn 1, bit sideways there in the background for Sophie Ver, as you can see in P8. And a big old gap now presenting itself at the sharp end of the field there as well. 1.7 seconds is what Sophie Bordeaux has over Tomoaki Yamanaka then. Now Yamanaka, we know, is no slouch, of course. If you are a fan of the FIA Certified Gran Turismo Championships, I'm sure you will know that he is held in very high esteem and has got many trophies to his name. I don't think he's got quite what it takes to overhaul Sophie Bordeaux as it stands so far. Let's bear in mind, of course, that Bordeaux was 1.1 seconds quicker in qualifying trim, and you can see that they're riding the curve. Now, the top GT drivers aren't doing that going into that corner, so that seems to be the fastest way to go in. You can scrub off a bit of speed into there, but it's a very risky manoeuvre because, of course, all the while you're on that curve and riding it, you're unsettling the car, unsettling the balance of the car. And, of course, the real-world drivers are just taking a little bit easier then going through those series of corners. I'm not surprised in any way, shape or form. It makes a lot of sense for them. So through into those S-bends they go and through the chicane. Sophie Violette then now coming under pressure then from Sophie Noir. Let's see whether a move is made here into this final hairpin. Not quite there for them as they come through. Violette defends that tighter line through the final corner. Again, Noir pulls alongside on the exit. Can she make the move then as they run again side by side out of the final corner? Now she's closer then is Sophie Noir versus Violette, and it's going to be a drag race then as they come down in towards the first corner. Has Noir got track position and got the inside line? She certainly has, but is Violette going to have the overspeed going into the braking zone of turn number 2? Bit of a wide line through there. Noir's ahead into the braking zone, holds the line and holds firm, and it's now Noir up into P6 then, but here comes Violette trying to retaliate on the corner exit of turn number 3, and also Sophie Ver's coming in to join the party then as well. So onto the brakes we go, into the right-hander. Well, I say onto the brakes, off the throttle very briefly through there, and now Noir is really having to look in their mirrors because, of course, Violette and Sophie Ver are not far away at all. Looking all at sea then here in this first sector. Seems like Sophie Violette is a bit quicker through this first part of the lap, and then Noir seems to just be that bit more stable through the second part then of it. So through into the left, then flicking it through into the right-hander as they come over the crest of the hill and down on the run into the hairpin of turn 12. This is a prime overtaking opportunity here on this lap. We cross back to the battle then for second place. You can see there in the background, looks like Violette was trying to send one up the inside of Noir, but I don't think she was able to make the move stick. As we look at our professional drivers then coming out of that hairpin and heading into the right-hander then, flicking it through these chicanes. It's such a tricky part of this circuit to negotiate. You can see just on the ragged edge of adhesion there for Takuma Miyazono, nearly clipping the wall on the outside, and that's about as close as you can get without having an accident into the barrier. Very impressive stuff then from Takuma Miyazono. So down in towards turn 17 we go. It's still Noir ahead of Violette at the moment then for 6th and 7th place, coming on to start the final lap. So this is where Violette is going to have to be getting their elbows out a little bit more and trying to challenge Noir before the checkered flag falls. Across the timing line we go then, and let's see how this is going to play out for our drivers. So down in towards the first corner we go. It's Noir ahead of Violette then at the front. Sophie Bordeaux's got a 4.6 second advantage over Yamanaka. Noir goes a bit deep into turn 3. That allows an opportunity on the inside then for Violette. Up the inside they go, bit of contact through turn 3, but it's Violette up into 6th place. Now comes Ver up the inside into the right-hander, maybe. Not quite through there for Ver, so 1 place lost then for Sophie Noir, but is it going to be 2 places lost then? No such troubles for this driver here, Sophie Bordeaux. She has got a 4.9 second advantage over Tomoaki Yamanaka. Hugely impressive performance from our GT Sophie AI system here, and just goes to show what an amazing technological exercise it is, riding that curb. She comes in towards turn number 12. And I dare say that the drivers are going to be taking a quick note of these driving lines, and I'm sure we will see exactly what that is going to mean then for them. Look at Violette then now onto the back of Takuma Miyazono. 0.3 of a second adrift she is, but can she find her way through as Noir and Ver going side by side for 7th position there as well. On board we ride here with Violette. Only real one overtaking opportunity left then for Violette. Miyazono a little bit slow through that second chicane. He knows that, goes defensive then against Violette as they run side by side through the tunnel in towards turn 17 for the last time then. Miyazono on the defensive defensive line. Violette goes to the grass. Can she get it slowed down on the outside? Side by side, they still go there, but Miyazono's got the overspeed as Bordeaux takes the checkered flag from Tomoaki Yamanaka, and Shitaru Ryu Kokeman finishes P4 ahead of Miyazono, who just gets the better of Sophie Violette by less than 0.2 of a second. Noir finishes in 7th, and Sophie Vere coming over the timing line then in P8. What a very impressive performance from our drivers. And it's first blood then to Sophie Bordeaux at the end of that first race. Takuma Miyazono there looking pretty chill, I must say, but I dare say he's going to be a little bit stressed after that one. Yamanaka looking a little bit more stressed than some of his other competitors then. And you can see their confirmation of the final results at the end of race 1 in the N500 cars here at the Dragon Trail Seaside Circuit. Bordeaux finishes on top. It's first blood then to the AI from Yamanaka, Ryu, Kokeman and Miyazono. 2nd to 5th place then occupied by our top Gran Turismo drivers, with the remaining 3 Sophy AI cars finishing in the last 3 positions then in that race. Very impressive stuff. You can see here some highlights then from the action out on track. There is Yamanaka sitting in 2nd position ahead of Shitaru Ryu. Yamanaka doing a really good job then out on track just to keep the pressure off. In fact, the top 4 drivers, top 5 drivers in fact, doing a phenomenal job over the course of that race. Here was Miyazono, just made a really couple of crucial errors there. You can see this is what it means for the points then at the end of that first race. 23 drivers, 23 points to our pro GT drivers, 16 points for GT Sophy, of course, as a result of those finishing positions.
そうですね、やっぱりスタートの時の位置取りっていうのが人間側はやっぱり先が読めるので、そこがかなり有利に働いて、後方からスタートした人間側が非常にポジション的にも上げられたっていうのが大きかったかなと思ってます。人間側で2位から5位まで取れたのは非常に良かったので、今ポイント的にも7ポイント有利っていうことなので、このリード分を最後までうまく持ち越して、いいレースこれからもしていきたいなと思います。
まずそのスタートの時に僕最後尾からスタートしたんですけど、AI を2台でパスできたので、そこがまず、予想外というかいいところだったのと、あとは後ろからかなり仕掛けられることになるんじゃないかなって思ってたんですけど、AI 側が何台かでバトルしてくれて、すごく自分としては集団の一番後ろだったんですけど楽な展開になったので、そうですね、あと2レースあるんですけど、この調子で、走っていきたいなっていうふうに思います。
想像以上に人間のプロの方たちが強かったという形ですね。やっぱりその最初に3人前に出られちゃったのが結構痛かったかなという感じ。全然追いつけるはずなんですけども、やっぱその AI 同士で戦っちゃっててちょっと置いてかれちゃったっていうところがあったので、今後やっぱりそのチーム戦っていうのを意識していかないといけないなというふうに思います。
Well, good then to hear from our GT competitors and our commentators in Japan then as well. Our focus now shifts over to race 2 for our GT Pro drivers versus AI in Race Together 2021. And let's have a preview of the circuit we're going to be racing on. It's the Lago Maggiore circuit for Race 2, a fictional track again on GT Sport based in Italy. And you can see here, this is what the circuit is all about. So it's 5.8 kilometers long, lots of undulation in this one. We break it up into 4 sectors there for you. You can see that there are going to be some ideal overtaking opportunities down in towards turn 1, and the hairpin bend at the end of the back straight, turn number 11 there, I think will also be a crucial overtaking opportunity. 38 metres was the elevation in race 1, 74 metres track elevation in race 2 for the Lago Maggiore GP circuit then. Keen to see what this is going to mean for our drivers. Once again, a one-lap qualifying system for them. They're in the Porsche 911 RSR. This, of course, is a real-world car that would have competed in the FIA GT3 class, but in GT Sport, it's competing in the Group 3 machines. You can see here it's Tomoaki Yamanaka who goes head-to-head with Sophie Rouge for the second race for qualifying. A reminder, of course, that whoever qualifies on the top position, on the pole position, means that their group will start from the odd positions on the grid, whilst whoever qualifies second will qualify on the even positions on the grid for their group. then certainly much closer between our GT Pro drivers and our Sophy AI here for the second race. Just a few tenths of a second separating Sophie Rouge and Tomoaki Yamanaka, but it does ultimately mean that once again we'll see the GT Sophy AI starting on the odd spots on the grid with the GT Pro drivers lining up on the even positions on the grid. You can see here during qualifying where the gaps were made between the AI and our GT Pro drivers. You can see here Sophie Rouge then on the outside. They're just making time on the exit of those few corners. Yamanaka tried his best. This was their final flying lap then within the session. And Sophie Rouge just able to take a bit more speed into the faster corners, it seemed like, over the course of that qualifying lap. Yamanaka really did try his best and actually had a good advantage within that first sector of the lap. This is where Rouge struggled in that first qualifying session. And you can see they're just coming through those S-bends down the hill and in towards this bank corner. This is where Rouge was able to get that advantage back as we cross back to look at our competitors setting their representative qualifying laps then over the course of this one. You can see here our Japanese commentators ready to go then as we get racing underway then for race 2 at the Autodromo Lago Maggiore circuit then. Race 2 for Race Together 2021 is about to get underway. It's the Autodromo Lago Maggiore GP circuit. It's our GT Sophy AI versus our GT Pro drivers. It's Sophie Rouge who lines up on pole position. Great qualifying lap from her. Alongside her on the front row of the grid is Tomoaki Yamanaka in his Porsche 911. Then it's Sophie Lavon in third place. So let's see how Lavon is going to fare. Then Shitaru Ryu, the 20-year-old from Nakagawa City. Next up we have Sophie Emerald in P5 on the grid. Sixth place is Takuma Miyazono, the 2020 Triple Nations Cup manufacturers and Toyota champion. Sophie Gries lines up P7 on the grid. Completing our 8-driver strong lineup is Ryota Kokubun, who lines up P8 and last at the back of the field then. So 6 laps for our drivers. Let's see how they are going to fare then here over the course of this one. A rolling start once again for the drivers to contend with, and it's Rouge who'll lead the field away from pole position. Now, of course, interestingly, in the first race, we had the 3 GT Pro drivers putting a bit of a gap between themselves and the AI. Let's see whether they can do that, because it seems to be making gains early doors is the way to go. Race 2 then is underway for Race Together 2021. Sophie Rouge leads the field down in towards the tight and tricky first corner. Look then at Yamanaka and Lavon going side by side. Yamanaka into second place, Lavon into P3 then, trying to make a move there, and looks like Sophie Emerald is off onto the grass on the outside of turn 1, and that has allowed Miyazono then to drop down into 6th position by the looks of things. Here comes Lavon versus Yamanaka. Lavon's on the grass on the outside, has to get off the throttle, get out of it. That allows Shitaru Ryu to come through up the inside and through into P3 then. So it's Rouge from Yamanaka, from Ryu then, from Sophie Lavon, from Sophie Emerald. So the 4 pro drivers are split into groups of 2. Here comes Lavon up the inside. I wonder if there was contact there between Ryu and Miyazono as they came through into that corner. The upshot is that it's now 3 AI drivers who are battling amongst one another, and it's under investigation by our stewards. So it was Lavon and Ryu then who came to blows in the first sector of the lap, and the stewards are going to be investigating that one then. So through the S-bends we go on the run down in towards that very fast banked hairpin. This is where the GT Sophy AI was so quick into those series of corners. Emerald goes on the defensive then as Ryu tries to attack in towards the right-hander. Is the tighter line going to compromise the AI then here, riding the curb then on the inside? It's actually compromised Ryu, who has a bit of a biff there with Miyazono and loses a position, possibly to Kokubun here then as well, and also Yamanaka. So 3 places lost in the space of 2 corners there for Shitaru Ryu. The 20-year-old is having an absolute mare in this first lap of the second race. So through into the final series of corners we go as we come towards the end then of this first lap here at the Autodromo Lago Maggiore circuit. Down in towards that left-hander we go, and over to the timing line to start the second lap, but it's Sophie Rouge that leads the way then 2.2 seconds nearly the advantage they have over Sophie Lavonde here then, ahead of Emerald. So it's the three GT Sophy AI drivers occupying the top three positions. Takuma Miyazono has got the best view of the AI drivers sitting in P4 there. Bit of oversteer out of turn 3. Does that compromise his line? No, doesn't cost him too much time there, but certainly looking to try and make ground on the back of Emerald there as he tries to go through and get himself onto the podium positions. Well, the drivers were very confident of being able to hold their line and hold firm against the AI, but it certainly proved to be a tougher challenge than I should imagine that they were thinking. Emerald goes defensive then. Miyazono tries to get the switch back on the inside. No opportunity presents itself through turn 3 then. On board we ride here then with Takuma Miyazono. Down through into the left-hander we go. Gentle application to the throttle. Lavonde being given a penalty then for that first lap contact. We thought that might be inevitable. Making contact then with Shitari Ryu, which cost him a lot of positions, and that 1 second penalty is going to be served then by the GT Sophy AI car very shortly indeed, and they're 1.1 seconds ahead of Emerald. But of course, it's not just the time you lose in the penalty, it is also the time you lose from being slower than your other competitors as well. So that could potentially cost Sophie Lavonde a position in second place there, as Emerald and Miyazono, as well as Kokowin and Yamanaka actually for that matter, are not too far adrift. So the GT Pro drivers seem to have got their act together after a bit of a scruffy first lap, not necessarily all of their own doing, I might like to add there as well, but certainly seem to be a little bit tidier now they've settled in to the race that little bit more. Meanwhile, no such troubles for Sophie Rouge leading the way, 2.3 seconds out in front then here. Down the hill we go into the final corner to start the third lap, already approaching the halfway stage then in this race of Race Together 2021, and what a fantastic technological exercise this is proving to be. An amazing team at Sony AI putting this whole construction together. Of course, we heard from some of the top guys who were involved in that earlier on in the broadcast. You can see the penalty about to be served here for Sophie Lavonde, the gap up to 1.5 seconds, but is it going to cost her time and potentially positions here to Sophie Emerald then? Here they come into the penalty zone. 1 second they will slow down, just moving slightly off the racing line, but of course, it's, as I said, it's not just about losing that time in the penalty, it's also the time that you lose with slowing down. Fortunately, it wasn't too much of a long straight there for Lavonde. It does cost her time, and it means now that Emerald is back onto the rear wing of her, just half a second or so away, but it's not quite enough for her to lose second position. Meanwhile, and it does mean also that Sophie Rouge, out in front in this race, the pole sitter, I might like to add, and now has a 3.7 second advantage over the rest of the field. On board we ride then here with Takuma Miyazono, bouncing off the rev limiter. Here he is. You can see nice smooth inputs of the steering wheel then, darting towards the inside as they come down the back straight. Is Miyazono going to be able to make a move? Robust defensive driving there for Emerald. I wonder if the stewards might be having a look at that. Miyazono goes up the inside into the hairpin, and it's Miyazono then who's through into third place. So the Japanese driver is now ahead of Emerald. It's the first of our GT Pro drivers this race onto the podium, but for how long? Because Emerald immediately tries to retaliate through there, has to back out at the last moment, has to think better of it. Miyazono goes for the defensive line. Does that mean that Emerald is going to have an opportunity to find her way back through before the end of this lap? I don't think so, but certainly down in towards the first corner, if Emerald can get a good run through that final turn, is where we could see moves being made. Let's see that defence then once again from Emerald. They're really aggressive chop of the nose there for Miyazono. Bit of contact between the two. He didn't have to get out of the throttle there, Miyazono, crucially. Kept his foot planted in it. Great commitment then from the Japanese driver, and it rewards him with third place for the time being. But Emerald, as you can see, they're trying to find their way back through up the inside into turn 2. Here comes Yamanaka as well. Miyazono pushed onto the grass there, no room to move it, loses 2 positions, loses 3 positions now then for Tomoaki Yamanaka. That's a disaster, and Yamanaka going up the inside, I apologise. So it's Miyazono, of course, who has been losing all of those positions. Yamanaka now goes through into P3, and Miyazono and Emerald once again under investigation there for Emerald. So in the wars then for our GT Sophy AI car then, who was running in second place, now running down into P5 after that contact we saw in the first series of corners. But now the upshot is that Yamanaka sits in third place. It's Shitari Ryu who sits P4. Emerald with a bit of a slide on now into P5 as a result of losing some positions and possibly due a penalty then, or at least a warning from the stewards. And Now Cockburn goes through up the inside, so making some good ground there is Cockburn, where Emerald is beginning to struggle here, I think, with the tyres, just pushing that bit too hard too soon. Coming down in towards the hairpin we go. Once again a defensive move there from Emerald, but losing 2, losing 3 position there for Emerald. Oh, and contact there as well, as I think Miyazono got a bit of a hit from Grease. Grease goes up into P5. Here comes Emerald on the outside then. Cockburn into P7 as well, so the 2 Japanese drivers have lost out for the time being. Incident involving Emerald, no further action then after that first lap contact. In towards the final series of corners we go, and Sophie Grease, we ride on board with them then, sitting in the back of this race for the most part, now inheriting P5 as a result of the GT Pro drivers' misfortune then in this race. Down the hill we go into the final corner. All ready to start lap number 5 then here for race 2 of Race Together 2021, and this is a phenomenal battle. Incident involving Miyazono and Grease then up to investigation. We saw contact then into that hairpin a few moments ago. Here comes Emerald trying to send it down the inside. More defensive driving from Grease once more, as Cockburn and Miyazono are really close to one another. They need to be a bit careful here, because of course if they get involved in too many squabbles, they could come a cropper, essentially, unstuck away, I should say, from the back of Emerald and Grease, who are battling for 5th place here. So they want to be a bit careful about that, as Emerald goes back up the inside on Grease and goes through. Miyazono versus Cockburn still side by side then in the background. Is Cockburn going to have a look up the inside? Certainly thinks about it. Grease comes back through on Emerald, meanwhile, for P5, going back through as they run into the outside of the curb. Emerald tries to retaliate immediately back. This is costing them all time, and it's allowing Cockburn and Miyazono then to have a bit of an opportunity. There's a big slide there for Emerald, costs her time, and now means that Cockburn is able to go onto the rear wing as Grease gets a warning then for that contact we saw into the hairpin on the last lap. It's all kicking off then here for P5 at the end of this race. Absolutely phenomenal stuff as we come down in towards that hairpin bend once more. No moves being made here by our pro drivers, and I'm not surprised at all, because that's where we've seen a fair smattering of contact over the course of this race. We're coming through in to start the final lap already, not far away from it. Sophie Rouge has driven an absolute stonker of a race, qualifying on pole position, 3.8 seconds up the road from Levon and Tomoaki Yamanaka. And now with a good advantage over the rest of the field, let's see whether she can do what she needs to do to claim the checkered flag and the win at the end of race 2 then. So through those S-bends we go into the final sector of the lap. Down the hill we come, into the left-hander. Long sweeping left-handed bend. Of course, this circuit in GT Sport can be run in both a clockwise and an anti-clockwise direction. Of course, on this occasion, we're running it in the clockwise direction. But it does make it very interesting in the anti-clockwise direction. Completely changes the characteristics of this circuit. So final lap time then, as we look at our pro drivers sat in their rigs. Cockburn and Miyazono sitting in 7th and 8th place then, respectively. A lot of concentration on their faces. These drivers, of course, no slouches at all. Cockburn, the winner of the 2019 World Tour. Takuma Miyazono, the 2020 triple champion as well. And not able to overhaul the Sophy AI system then here in this second race. So into the right-hander we go. Bit of a slide there from Sophie Grease in 5th position, but Emerald then coming under more pressure here from Ryota Cockburn. Is Cockburn going to be able to make a move up the inside before the end of this race? Let's see whether he can, as he comes through those S-bends once again, over the crest of the hill, and then it's in towards the left, then the right, as they come on that long run into the hairpin bend. This is the best overtaking opportunity potentially here for Ryota Cockburn then. Can he make the move? Stick, he's in the slipstream, pulls out of the slipstream there. Emerald goes defensive, really, really aggressive defensive driving, not allowing a lot of room there for Cockburn. Oh, and Miyazono into the back of Emerald, into that hairpin bend there as well. That allows an opportunity and some room there for Cockburn to go up the inside. So the 2 Japanese drivers split our GT Sophy AI then here, but I wonder whether the stewards might be having a look at that after the end of that race. Very, very mistimed braking zone there for Miyazono, who goes down the inside into the right-hander and goes through into 7th place then. So Takuma Miyazono is through into 7th position and displaces Emerald then, as Sophie Rouge comes across the timing line to take the win in race 2 from Sophie Levon. So it's now 2 drivers from the GT Sophy AI system that occupy the top 2 positions in the first race, ahead of Yamanaka, the first of our GT Pro drivers, and a 1-second penalty then awarded to Takuma Miyazono for that contact on the final lap of the race. Well, drama to the very end of that one. Huge congratulations then to Sophie Rouge, pole position for the AI and the win in race 2 then here at the Autodrome in Lago Maggiore GP circuit. You can see there confirmation of your final results. Rouge Levon take the top 2 positions ahead of Yamanaka, Shitaru Ryu in 3rd and 4th place, then Greece, Cockburn, Emerald and Takuma Miyazono, that 1 second penalty dropping him to 8th and last position respectively at the end of that one then. But a very, very exciting second race then here as we look at our drivers in the Polyphony Digital offices, just departing from that one, having a drink of water after that race, and I'm not surprised at all. Very sweaty and very, very action-packed and adrenaline-filled stuff for our drivers. And you can see here, going over to chat to the Japanese commentators was Michael Sprunger, the COO of Sony AI. And here is the point standings then after that second race. So now the pro drivers have a 2-point deficit to the Sophy AI. So that is going to make things very interesting indeed going into this final, grand final, double points which are on offer as well for our drivers. Really keen to see how this is all going to play out. More information on where that's taking place and the cars the drivers are going to be competing in just a few moments' time. But first of all, let's chat to some of our pro drivers then, find out what they've got to make after that second race and how they're adapting to the AI. What changes are they having to make, crucially, in their driving styles as well? All things that have to be considered here with this race together in 2021. Our GT Pro competitors versus the Sony AI. Let's go over to them, shall we now, and catch up with them, find out what they have to make after race number 2.
まず予選実は今回僕担当したんですけど、やっぱり純粋に速いので、ただ思ったより実は差がなかったので、スリップストリームを使ってタイムを出しにいけるかっていうのをチャレンジしたんですけど、ちょっと失敗しちゃったので、そこはもったいなかったかなっていう部分もありました。レースは今回結構接戦な部分もあって、そこで追い抜きとかもできましたし、今かなりいいバトルができている状態なので、ポイント的にはギリギリ今人間が負けてるはずなので、最後のレーススタートでなんとか前に出れれば優勝のチャンスあると思ってるので、最後まで全力でやりたいと思います。
宮園選手がもう行けっていうような合図をしてくれたので、もう自分もそれに合わせて、イン側を入っていったって感じですね。
そういうところって AI にない強さですかね、やっぱりね。
そうですね、人間ならではの意思疎通ができるっていう点の強みだと思いますね。
AI の走りがすごいクレバーで、個人的に非常に楽しいレースでした。
良いという結果はどうですか？
結果としては、僕自身その AI にちょっと押されるような形でちょっと一回後退してしまったっていうのがちょっと反省点ではあるんですけど、全体的にはその選手の皆さんと協力して上位フィニッシュできるよう全力で頑張れたので良かったかなと思います。
Well then, our focus shifts over to the grand final for Race Together 2021. GT Pro drivers versus the Sony AI, the Sophy AI system. And let's see how the drivers are going to fare then at the Circuit de la Sarthe for our double points grand final. Red Bull X2019 cars for our drivers to compete in. The Circuit de la Sarthe, of course, Le Mans to you and me. If you're familiar with the circuit at home, I'm sure you will know it very well. 7 sectors we break it up into, lots of corners, the Mulsanne straight being the longest and best overtaking opportunity, split up by 2 chicanes. Mulsanne corner, Arnage corner really is the last overtaking real opportunity over the course of that lap then as well. You can see the elevation change, just 37.3 metres, but it's a very exciting challenge for our drivers to compete in here then. And let's see how they're all going to fare ahead of this grand final then. So competitors warming themselves up. And these Red Bull X2019s, of course, the most powerful cars that the drivers have competed in so far then here today. And you can see them out on track then here for qualifying. So this is Takuma Miyazono versus Sophie Orange, who was the AI that was nominated for this grand final. And let's see how they are going to fare then for this race. And you can see it's a very long lap then here. 3:19 was the benchmark set by Takuma Miyazono. Would Sophie Orange be able to better that one then on this beautiful Circuit de la Sarthe? A little bit wide there through the final corner, but over the timing line it was significantly faster than Miyazono's best lap time at this point. in the qualification session. So Sophie Orange taking the pole position after race number 1. Miyazono finishing in second place. So once again, it is the AI that starts on pole position for race 3, I should say, for the grand final. And it'll be the GT Pro drivers that will start in the even positions on the grid then. Double points on offer for this one. 2 points between our drivers as well. Let's take a look, shall we, at some highlights from qualifying and see what happened. Qualifying once again then was a very interesting affair for our drivers ahead of the grand final for Race Together 2021, and it was Sophie Orange who qualified on pole position from Takuma Miyazono then. So it is the GT Sophy AI that will line up on pole position and on the odd spots on the grid from our GT Pro drivers. Just 2 points in it to remind you then as well for this grand final. 40 points for GT Sophy and 38 points for our GT Pro drivers. You can see here then out on track during the qualifying session, Sophie Orange, really aggressive chop of the lines then coming through into those chicanes. Orange getting the better of Takuma Miyazono's time by quite a significant margin. Very long lap here, of course, to bear in mind at Le Mans, so it's all relative, isn't it, over the course of this one. Keen to see how the drivers then are going to fare in these Red Bull X 2019s. 7 laps for the drivers to compete in over the course of this 13.8 kilometre long circuit. Definitely the toughest race that we've got out of the 3. Let's get ready then to go green, shall we? Tension then is in the air then for our drivers. Let's get ready to see what is going to happen then here. Our 4 GT Pro competitors lined up, ready to go for this grand final here at the Circuit de la Sarthe. And interestingly, a standing start for our drivers as well. This is how the grid lines up. It's Sophie Orange who starts on the pole position. Alongside her on the front row of the grid, it is Takuma Miyazono, the 2020 triple champion. Next up on the grid, we have Sophie Bleu, lining up at the head of row number 2, and alongside her it is Tomoaki Yamanaka, the fast-charging Japanese driver. Sophie Jean lines up P5 on the grid, and then next up we have Ryota Kokubun in P6. 7th position on the grid will be Sophie Blanche, and then the final of our GT Pro drivers, of course, is Shitaru Ryu, who lines up P8, and last on the grid. 8 drivers ready to take to the track then. Let's see what's going to happen down towards that first corner. 7 laps for our drivers. Double points then on offer here at the Circuit de la Sarthe. Who is going to take the checkered flag and the overall win of the AI versus the GT Pro drivers? Ready to go racing then. It's lights out and we are underway. Orange gets away well from Miyazono. Not a bad start there from Sophie Bleu as well as they come down towards the first corner. Yamanaka though gets the leapfrog on Blur and goes up into 3rd position, so it's Orange on the defensive. Then here comes Miyazono up the inside as well as Yamanaka in towards turn number 2, and Orange is losing all sorts of positions then as Kokubun's come through into 3rd place now as well. So a great start then from Ryota Kokubun. So into the top 3 GT Pro drivers who have the advantage in the early stages over Yamanaka and Kokubun then, and Blanche and Orange now relegated down to 4th and 5th place then respectively. So not a good start then for the Sophie AI. Shitaru Ryu not having such a good start. The only one of the pro drivers not really to make much progress off of the grid. Started in 8th place, made his way up into 6th position, but certainly not having the level of progress that his other compatriots are. Meanwhile, you can see here a move being made here by Sophie Orange on Sophie Blanche. So the 2 Sophie AIs battling amongst one another. Orange tries to go up the inside into the first chicane. No opportunity presenting itself there, and Blanche is able to defend for the time being as they come down then the Mulsanne straight. So Orange back into the slipstream. This is one of the prime overtaking spots on the lap, just to remind you here then as well. You can see there Ryu is battling with Sophie Jean. Few weaves there from Jean, but Ryu gets himself ahead then for the time being on Sophie Jean. But how long is that going to be for? Because it's a very long straight here. Orange is now ahead of Blanche into the braking zone. And it's Orange then who's up into P4. So a good opening lap then for Orange in terms of recovery. Started, of course, on pole position, so not a good lap in terms of where she's sitting now in the race. But in terms of making progress back through the field, it's proving to be a very exciting prospect indeed. You can see those weaves as they come down the back straight. Here's Miyazono versus Yamanaka then. They're really close amongst one another. This, of course, is crucial for the GT Pro drivers and their points haul in this race. Just to remind you as well, of course, it is double points that's on offer, so 20 for the win, and thereafter, of course, all double points down to 8th and last position in this one. So if the top 3 pro drivers finish in the top 3 positions, that should guarantee them the win in this Race Together 2021 event. But we are side by side here with Yamanaka versus Miyazono. Miyazono hits the front from Yamanaka from Kokubun then. 2.5 second advantage they have almost over Sophie Blanche as they come in towards Arnage then for the first time. Into that corner we go, and out of it now, and that gap is just beginning to come down ever so slightly between the top 3 pro drivers and Sophie Blanche. So let's see whether it changes hands. Of course, a very long race this one, certainly, as we said earlier on, the toughest out of the 3. Keen to see how this is all going to play out then here as we come in towards those Porsche curves. And you can see there Yamanaka all over the rear wing of Takuma Miyazono. But is he going to be able to find his way through before the end of this race? Let's find out. into those Porsche curves we go, very much one at a time through there. You don't want to be going side by side with your fellow competitors into those series of corners because it's a one-way ticket into the barrier. There is Shitaru Ryu, who's really dropped off into the back of Sophie Blanche actually, so not a good start there for the 20-year-old. Unfortunately in this race now 1.8 seconds adrift of Blanche, all on the racing hard tyres to remind you, so no pit stops expected then for these drivers. Very keen to see how this is all going to play out though here, because of course tyre wear will be a factor. How will the GT Pro drivers manage it versus the AI system? In towards the Dunlop chicane we go at the start of lap 2 then. Miyazono putting out a bit of an advantage over Tomoaki Yamanaka, now 0.6 of a second. Big old slide as we cross on board with Sophie Orange there, so just getting a bit sideways coming through those series of corners, but certainly closing that gap up quite significantly onto the back of Ryota Kokubun here. It was 1.8 seconds if you remember the last time we clicked in with them, but now it's under half a second, and they're coming down the Mulsanne straight, which is one of the best overtaking opportunities on this lap here at the Circuit de la Sarthe, but of course not quite so easy when the driver in front, Ryota Kokubun, has that slipstream in front of him as well, courtesy of Tomoaki Yamanaka. You can see Orange there bouncing off of the rev limiter and just not able to find her way past of Ryota Kokubun so far, but still a lot of time left in this race for proceedings to change. So down the second part of the Mulsanne we go then. And you can see there just going back into the slipstream, but you can see also Kokubun really close onto the back of Tomoaki Yamanaka then here. Is Kokubun going to think about a move on the back of Yamanaka? Don't think so into that chicane. Wise, he thinks better of it, because the thing is, as I said earlier on, if they get squabbling amongst one another, that's going to be an open door for Sophie Orange at this stage. You just have to be really careful in these early stages when the field is so bunched up, because one slight mistake, one slight error, one slight opportunity, and the GT Sophie AI, they are going to be taking advantage of it hand over fist. Speaking of taking advantage, Sophie Bleur has got herself up into 7th position ahead of Sophie Jean now as well. So Jean moves down into 8th and last position then in this race. That place is just exchanged hands. Coming down that Mulsanne straight. Here we can see Sophie Orange then in P4. Behind her is Sophie Blanche, who, interestingly, is pulling out of the slipstream then, coming down this back straight and in towards Indianapolis. Not quite sure what that's all about, but we'll keep a close eye on proceedings. You can see there as well that Yamanaka still sits on the rear wing of Kokubun. These guys need to be working together really at this stage, because look at Orange really close onto the back. Was there a bit of contact into the left-hander? I think there was. Kokubun pushed onto the gravel and losing a position to Orange, and also another one to Sophie Blanche as well. So down into P5 in the space of one corner there. I wonder whether the stewards are going to be having a look at that, because it looked like, to my viewpoint, that there was a smattering of contact between the two, and Orange just a bit late then on the brakes. And indeed, that incident under investigation between them. Kokubun losing 2 places, so now only 2 drivers separating Orange from the front end of the field. And Shitaru Ryu is still sitting in 6th position then in this race. Was just ahead of Kokubun for a few moments' time, but has just dropped back now down into P6. But now Sophie Orange, we ride on board with her. A 1 second gap sits between herself and Tomoaki Yamanaka. The speed that these AI systems are able to carry through those 4 chicanes, the final corners on this lap, is mightily impressive. And you can see that gap just coming down ever so slightly. I wonder whether it's going to be enough before the end of this race for Orange to battle for position. I say battle for position, it's not going to be a battle for position now, certainly, because it's a 1.6 second deficit and a 1 second penalty then for that contact that we saw just a few moments ago. So disaster there for Sophie Orange. That could prove to be a bit of a nail in the coffin, because Sophie Blanche is only 1 second down the road. And as I mentioned in the previous race, if you joined us for that, it's not just the time you lose with that 1 second penalty, it's the time you lose after it as well, because of course when you serve your penalty, your car is that bit slower than the drivers who are behind. So if the field is bunched up like it is now, you don't just lose that second, you lose about 2 seconds in reality. So when Orange serves that penalty, depending on the gap between herself and Blanche, it could prove to be pretty fatal. Let's see how it all works out then here. Coming in towards the penalty zone for Orange, sitting in 3rd position, and that'll be very disappointing then for the GT AI. Into the penalty zone we go. I suppose one crumb of comfort is that the AI that's going to go past is of course now very quick and has been battling and setting good lap times as Blanche goes through into 3rd position then. So it's Sophie Blanche up into 3rd place Now it's Orange into P4, but how long is that going to change hands for? You can see there in the background, Bleu and Jean going hammer to hammer, side by side, wing mirror to wing mirror, whatever you want to call it, for 7th position, very briefly. Bleu now ahead of Jean for P7. So already then approaching the halfway stage of this grand final. And from a race that was looking quite comfortable in the opening lap for the GT Pro drivers, not looking so comfortable now then here. Double points on offer, just to remind you then here, for our GT Pro drive, for in fact all of our competitors here in this final race. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a walk in the park. There are 2 points separating the AI and the GT Pro drivers coming into this final race. 40 points for the AI, 38 points for the Pro drivers. So 2 points separating them, double points on offer. I'm very keen to see how this is going to work out. What we need here, really, for Kokubun and Ryu, the Pro drivers, is some kind of an incident with the AI for them to be able to close up, because Kokubun is 1.7 seconds back, and that in racing terms is about a week, to be honest with you. He's not close enough to be able to mount a challenge at the moment, and he's certainly not within slipstreaming range. We reckon about slipstreaming range is around 1.1, 1.2 seconds, there and thereabouts. That's the maximum distance you can be from the car in front. If you're outside of that, well, you've got no hope of catching up to the driver in front, so you need to be able to do it all in the corners. But we know that the Sophy AI are just so quick in those corners. They carry so much entry speed coming through those curves. It's mightily impressive. Incident involving Blanche and Orange is under investigation for illegal blocking. Now that must have been on the Mulsanne straight when we saw the penalty then being served for Orange, who's now got herself ahead of Blanche once again. So certainly the quicker of the two AI is Orange then in 3rd position, 1 second now ahead of Blanche. So lap 4 we run on here then at Le Mans. Through the right-hander into the braking zone of the Dunlop chicane, the first chicane on this lap. It's a fantastic part of the lap. And you can see here then Takuma Miyazono just driving away with things at the moment. Now 1.6 seconds, nearly 1.7 seconds, the advantage sits between himself and Tomoaki Yamanaka. Incident involving Blanche and Orange. No further investigation necessary, no further action after that investigation, I should say, for the drivers. On board we ride here then with Orange, certainly closing that gap now down to Tomoaki Yamanaka. And this could prove to be the saving grace here for the Sophy AI system, because, of course, double points on offer, the 2-point advantage they had going into this race. And let's see how it's all going to play out then here. So we saw the top speed when you have a slipstream. It's about 320 kilometers an hour. 313 we saw on the speedo there for Sophy Orange. But just look at the traction she's able to get out of those corners, out of the chicane, and closing up onto the back of Yamanaka, just incrementally, just half a tenth here, half a tenth there. That could prove to be the difference, though, between being in that slipstream and not. At the moment, just a bit too far away. No real opportunity to present itself. And, of course, it's one thing getting in the slipstream and trying to pass your driver in front. It's another thing actually being able to get past them. So through that second chicane we go onto the second part of the Mulsanne Straight. Flicking it through the right-handed kink, there is Tomoaki Yamanaka, just in the forefront of your shot. The 2021 Toyota GT Cup champion. Yamanaka, hugely impressive performance from the Samurai, as he's known in some circles. Very high regard he's held within the FIA certified Gran Turismo championships. And I'm sure if you've been watching our championships over the last couple of years, you'll know he's a very familiar name to us here as well. So down the second straight we go, again another prime overtaking opportunity with the slipstream down then here, but they're coming towards Indianapolis and you don't really want to be going 2 by 2 there, so you want to be able to make the move before you go into those corners. So through the right-hander we go, then flicking it into the left, and then into Barnage. This is the 90-degree right-hander. This is arguably the last overtaking opportunity on the lap. Really, if you can get yourself ahead here and get yourself ahead into the Porsche curves, then you're not guaranteed, but you're certainly in with a better shout of being able to hold on to that position before the checkered flag falls. We saw that, of course, in 2019 at the World Tour, if you remember, with Ryota Kokubun and Adriano Corazza, I believe it was, in the Nations Cup. We saw some brilliant racing action between the two of them. Kokubun was able to get himself up into the lead on the final lap. Corazza tried a dive bomb at the final corner, but it's just not 2 by 2 into these chicanes, and it wasn't quite enough for him to be able to find his way past, and as such, it was Cockburn who took the checkered flag. Sadly for Cockburn here, the 2019 World Tour winner in Tokyo, he only sits in P5 then in this race. He has got a bit of a cushion over Shitari Ryu, just under a second or so, sitting between those drivers in 5th and 6th position then respectively. Meanwhile, the gap coming down again ever so slightly between Yamanaka and Orange. Seems like Yamanaka is a bit stronger in the first sector of the lap, whereas Orange is a bit stronger in the final sector of the lap. The gap now down to just under 1.2 seconds, so we're coming in towards that slipstream window then here. And let's see how this is all going to play out. So I have to say, this is just phenomenal from the team at Sony AI. Huge credit to all who've been involved, to Michael Spruger, to Kenta Kawamoto, I should say, rather, the development manager of Gran Turismo Sophy, as well as Takuma Senu, the development manager of Gran Turismo Sophy as well. So Michael Sprunger, Kenta Kawamoto and Takuma Seno, three very key people in making this Gran Turismo Sophy AI system happen, bringing it to life, quite literally, for our drivers. And to have drivers that are competing at this level, it's very difficult to overstate just how impressive that is, really, because, of course, when you're programming AI, I've got absolutely no idea just how difficult it is, but I can imagine it's a very, very difficult thing. And I was talking to one of the team at Polyphony Digital, and he said, the thing is, when you're playing a game of chess, you have to bear in mind that, of course, the AI has time. They have seconds, minutes sometimes, to work out how they're going to respond. In terms of racing, of course, everything's happening live, so you've got milliseconds to do those reactions, to be able to have an AI that can react in a live manner and be able to put up these fights and to be able to compete with the likes of Takuma Miyazono, Tomoaki Yamanaka, Ryota Kokuben and Shitari Ryu, four of the quickest drivers on Gran Turismo, is hugely impressive. So hats off to the Gran Turismo Sophy AI team. So out of the Mulsanne corner we go then, down the back straight we come once more. The gap now between Yamanaka and Sophie Orange sits at under 1 second for the first time then in a very long time between these drivers. Down the back straight we go in towards Indianapolis, not quite close enough there. Orange going to have to watch their mirrors ever so slightly as well, because Sophie Blanche in the white machine, not far away there at all either. So coming in towards the closing stages of this race. I say the closing stages, it's still a 3-minute 30-second lap or so under racing conditions then here. So still plenty of time left to run and plenty of time for things left to change. Here we are then riding on board with Takuma Miyazono. So down and towards the Porsche curves he goes, has been able to build that gap up to Tomoaki Yamanaka to 2.2 seconds. Miyazono doing a superlative job out there on track. Here is Orange then, really closing up onto the back of Yamanaka. The gap just creeping over a second through these twisty bits in the final sector of the lap. But that is where we know that Yamanaka is slightly stronger than Orange. So coming in towards that final series of chicanes we go. I say slightly stronger, in some aspects slightly stronger, but certainly into these chicanes, you have to argue that the Orange AI look a bit more committed from third position. That gap coming under a second through those corners, and that could just be a little bit of sensibleness then from Miyazono as he just tries to save his tyres towards the end of this race, to just have something to try and fight back if an attack is mounted by the AI. So coming through then into those series of corners, it just amazes me how they're able to run on the grass like that. That really is quite literally on the ragged edge of adhesion, because there's no grip on the grass, there's a lot more grip on the black stuff, on the tarmac, and as such it's really sort of playing with fire. That's why you'll see the human drivers, our GT Pro drivers, just taking it a bit more cautiously, I guess, because they have that, what's the way of describing it, they have the fear, almost, is probably the only way I can sort of describe it at the moment, that sort of sense that you're thinking, well, I won't do that just in case I go off. So it's a really important factor to consider. Whereas, of course, the AI, I'm sure they don't necessarily have that bit programmed. And as we heard from Yamauchi-san at the top of the broadcast, this is a great exercise in learning more about human beings by using AI in this perspective, in this environment. So, again, an amazing feat for the drivers. Now, down this Mulsanne straight, I thought this is where we would see Orange closing up onto the back of Tomoaki Yamanaka. The gap coming down to just under a second or so, but certainly not within attacking range as it stands then here for Orange. And of course, all of these points are going to be absolutely crucial, because if Yamanaka makes a mistake or is forced wide, that could allow Blanche to come through as well. So it could be a potential loss of a podium here for Yamanaka. He's going to be very, very careful of that. Through into the hairpin bend we go. Into the right-hander, I should say, of the Mulsanne corner. And down the back straight, once again, under 1 second it sits between Miyazono and Tomoaki Yamanaka then here. That's 2.2 seconds, I should say, it sits between Miyazono and Yamanaka. 1 second now, it sits between Yamanaka and Orange. This is the battle right at the back of the field. This is Ryu on the defensive from Sophie Bleu, and also Cockburn involved in the mix here as well, coming down in towards Indianapolis. You don't really want to be making any moves into their defensive line in front then from Ryu. Bleu tries to get onto the back of the rear wing, tries to find his way through. Can she find her way through into Arnage? Not quite into there. And that, as we know, is really the last proper overtaking opportunity on this lap. But we've got one more lap left here to run. 13.8 kilometres here at the Circuit de la Sarthe. And this is going to make things very interesting as we come in towards the crescendo of this race. And you can see then Cockburn just in front, looking a little bit raggedy at the moment then here. 4.9 seconds back from Sophie Blanche, who sits in P4. And P5 it is for Cockburn, but for how long is Sophie Bleu, the AI, going to be able to find her way through? Ryu there doesn't want to be going too wide, because the stewards, the team at Polyphony Digital, are going to be looking at that one before too long, I'm sure of it. And that was half a second or so that he was just able to hold on to. The gap now sitting between himself, and a big sideways slide there from Shitaru Ryu cost him a position out of the final corner to Sophie Bleu. So on to the final lap we run then here at the grand final. And again, this isn't just important for the finishing position in this race, it is also important for the final points positions in this grand final. So this is going to make things very exciting then as we come on to the final lap. Sophie Orange now, the gap down to under 0.7 of a second. She's just been waiting until the right opportunity to pounce, and I dare say that that opportunity is about to come to fruition before too long. So down the Mulsanne straight we go for the final time. It's second place up for grabs here for Sophie Orange. It's under threat for Tomoaki Yamanaka. She has the advantage of the slipstream and has a bit of overspeed then here, but can she find her way through as she comes down in towards the chicane, pulls towards the inside to Sophie Orange, or darts back in right at the last moment, carrying good corner speed through there. Yamanaka's on the attack though, trying to defend that line, but of course that gap is so close between them as they come down into the second part of this Mulsanne straight. I dare say it could be near enough a foregone conclusion for Orange to get the position back on Tomoaki Yamanaka. Here we go then, in the slipstream, into the chicane. Lifting off the throttle ever so slightly, so I wonder if she's just biding her time and waiting, trying to force Yamanaka into a mistake. Yamanaka goes defensive. That could cost him time on the exit. A slight hint of contact also going into that second chicane there as well, just to bear that in mind. Don't think the stewards will be taking a look at it too briefly, but just something to consider. Any more like that, and then the stewards could be issuing warnings, maybe penalties. Here's Yamanaka then on the defensive. Here's Orange going for the outside line into the Mulsanne corner. Yamanaka lays on the brakes, inside line, defends track position, holds firm, gets second place back from Sophie Orange after she briefly took it over. Now we've got the second part then of this straight. This is one of the best overtaking opportunities because of course you've got the advantage of the slipstream, but you need to do it on the straight. You can't do it going into the braking zone because there isn't one. And you can see that Orange knows that, goes towards the outside line and is ahead then of Tomoaki Yamanaka as they come in towards Indianapolis. So it's the Sophie AI system ahead of Tomoaki Yamanaka. So it's Miyazono from AI, from Yamanaka from AI, from Cockburn from AI, from Ryu from AI. So it is very, very interesting, and this is proving to be a very exciting climax to the race. And it's going to make things very interesting in terms of the overall point standings then here as well. We've come through Arnage. That was the last real overtaking opportunity then for Sophie Orange. But is Yamanaka going to try and invent something down into the Porsche curves? You bet he is. What a move then from Tomoaki Yamanaka to get it ahead. Orange runs it a bit wide through that corner as well. That allows just a bit of breathing space there. So everything I was saying earlier about being ahead going into Arnage was of course, as normal, absolutely wrong, because Yamanaka gets himself ahead of Sophie Orange in the dying stages of this race. Absolutely phenomenal stuff but what a drive it has been from Takuma Miyazono. He rounds the final corner to win the grand final for Race Together 2021. It's a Japanese 1-2 with Yamanaka getting second place in the final stages of that race. The lead AI car is Sophie Orange coming home in P3 ahead of Sophie Blanche in P4. Then Kokoman comes over the timing line, P5 ahead of Blur, Ryu and Sophie Jean. What a phenomenal end to the race there. There is Tomoaki Yamanaka, who I dare say will be breathing a sigh of relief after that one. There's the team at Polyphony Digital and our Japanese commentators on location. What a fantastic race from Takuma Miyazono. The checkered flag flies for the Japanese driver. There's confirmation of your final results as the 7-lap race comes to its conclusion. 2 Japanese drivers on top ahead of 2 AI drivers. Here then are some highlights from that race. You can see away from the line it was Orange versus Miyazono. Yamanaka got a great start and managed to leapfrog Sophie Blur down in towards the first series of corners. Then a big send from Takuma Miyazono. That got him into the race lead, and then he was never troubled for the rest of that race. Yamanaka tried to attack in the opening stages, but just wasn't quite close enough then on that occasion. You can see Michael Sprunger then, the COO of Sony AI, smile on his face after that one. And here are the point standings at the end of it then. The Pro GT drivers get 80 points, 86 points for the Pro GT drivers, and GT Sophie 70 points at the conclusion of that event. So the Gran Turismo Pro drivers, Tomoaki Yamanaka, Shitaru Ryu, Takuma Miyazono and Ryota Kokuman are the 4 drivers who end up on top then ahead of the Gran Turismo Sophy AI system. What a fantastic evening's worth of racing it has been. 3 brilliant races, a fantastic technological showcase from our drivers, the team at Sony AI and at Gran Turismo and Polyphony Digital as well. I've been your commentator, Tom Brooks. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll hand back over to our team in Japan for the award ceremony for Race Together 2021.
はい、すべてのレースが終わりましたけれども、どれもドキドキするですね、白熱の素晴らしい、3レースでございました。本当にね、やっぱり人間勝てと思うところもあれば、なんか抜かれると今度はなんかソフィーの方も頑張ってほしいなって気持ちになったりとか、不思議なこうなんか感情が、自分の中でもですね生まれてくるのがですね、印象的だったんですけれども、グランツーリスモソフィーは本日に至るまでさまざまなコースや状況で膨大なテスト走行を行ってきたんですよね。本日は AI の進化を、その結果目の当たりにすることができました。それでは初めにですね、チームグランツーリスモトップドライバーズの皆さんに今日のレースについてお話を伺っていきたいと思いますが、宮園選手、はい、どうでしたか？
いや思ってたよりも本当に人間と争ってるような感じで、本当自分何回かかわされたりしたんですけど、はい、すごいこう抜かし返してやろうっていうような気持ちになれましたし、本当にすごいアグレッシブで、これからもっと一緒にレースしていきたいなっていうふうに思いましたね。はい、そうですか。なんかこう友情が芽生えたというか、ライバル心が芽生えたというか。そうですね、友情かもしれないですし、ライバル心かもしれないですし、本当になんかいろんな気持ちが生まれたかなっていうふうに思いました。いいですね。はい。山中選手はいかがでしたか？
はい、そうですね、今日のレース振り返ってみると、予選も担当しましたし、やっぱりそこから AI から学ぶものっていうのが非常に多かったなという、その速く走るために僕たちが考えもしないような走らせ方、確かに操作を見てみるとすごい理にかなっていて、そこはすごく参考になったので、本当にいろんなことを学べるなっていう存在であったのと、あとは一緒にバトルをすると、宮園選手も言ってましたけど、またバトルしたいなと、また負けないぞっていう気持ちが芽生えたのは、すごくやってて楽しい感情がすごく湧き起こったなっていうのは感じました。
国分選手はどうですか？
はい、まず AI は本当に速い走りがすごくて、まずそこを速く走るラインを AI から本当に多く学びました。そして、AI とレースをしてみて、機械という枠組みを超えて人間味を感じましたね。はい、
人間味を感じました。どんなところに？
はい、まずバトルをしている時にちゃんと抜きにかかってくるっていうスタイルが、人間味を感じるというか、
闘争心みたいなものを感じたってことですか？
はい、
はい。劉選手はどうですか？
そうですね、速いっていうのはもちろんあるんですけど、僕はそれ以上になんか AI って機械的なものではなくて、何か人間味のあるなんかまた別のなんか今までにないような、 ものなんじゃないかなっていうふうにすごく感じました。
やはりこうなんていうか血が流れてるような感じがしたというか、
はい、例えばレイクマジョーレ
はい
レイツ2で戦ったんですけどクロスラインを通って僕が抜き返したらその次のコーナーで
はい
さらに抜き返されてっていう、
はい
なんか僕の闘争心をくすぐられるようなバトルを何度もやってきて、なんかそれをやられた時になんか普通の機械とはまた違う何かなんだなっていう風に感じて、なんかまた新しい気持ちになりましたね。
向こうの車のウィンドウの内側に何くそって言ってそうな感じがするというか、
そうですね、
いや、本気のバトルができたということですね。はい、チームグランツーリズムトップドライバーの皆さん、どうもありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
さあ続きましてチームグランツーリズムソフィーの皆さんでございますが、川本さん、まずはいかがでしたか、 GT 選手との戦いは。
いや複雑ですね。半分いや負けちゃったって残念なのはもちろんある一方で、
はい
なんかこうすごいエキサイティングなレースで、なんか清々しいというか、いやまだ終わってないけどやりきったっていうか、なんか別にやりきってないです、これからもっと強くなるんですけど、なんかそういうこう複雑な何とも言えない気持ちですね。
まずはでもデビュー戦ですもんね。
そうですね、初めて。
はい、子供を送り出すような気持ちですか。
そうですね、学芸会で頑張れみたいな感じで
頑張ってましたか。
頑張ってます。ただ一方で、開発する側でもあるんで、やっぱ悔しいところもありますね。
印象に残ったのはどこですか、川本さん。
やっぱ最後の山中選手とのこのバトルで、抜いた、やっぱ僕はこっち側に感情移入してるんで、抜いた、やったって思ったら抜かれたってこの振幅の
気持ちのアップダウンが最後はちょっと残念でしたけど、でもね、熱いバトルをね繰り広げましたからね。
やりたいって言ってもらえたのはすごい嬉しいんで、またぜひ
さらに強くなって帰ってくると。いやー、恐ろしいですね。これ以上強くなったらどうなるのかって感じもしますが、さあそして瀬能さんどうですか。
そうですね、PDI の方たちと協力してもらってすごいたくさんのテストをしてきたんですけども、本当にそこからは想像できないぐらいやっぱり選手の方たちが強かったというのがやっぱり印象ですね。本当に強いんだなということで、まだまだ僕らもやることがたくさんあるなという気持ちになりました。
もうちょっと楽勝で勝てると思ってましたか。
そうですね、特に C サイドとか絶対勝てると思ったんですけど、ちょっと2位3位を取られてしまって、ちょっと課題が多いなと。
印象的だったのはどこですか。
やっぱり僕もされての山中選手との最後の攻防戦なんですけども、やっぱその抜ききれないのが本当に強いなと思いました。本当、今までだったら本当抜いたらそのまま置いていくっていうような感じだったんですけども、本当に抜いたら抜き返されてっていうのが起こって、本当にまだまだやることが多いなという気持ちです。
まだまだソフィーも伸びしろが、もしくは努力しなきゃいけないところがあるんですね。
そうですね、僕らがそうですね、努力してインプルーブしていくという感じですね。
はい、ありがとうございました。チームグランツーリズムトップドライバーズ、そしてチームグランツーリズムソフィー、両チームとも白熱しました。素晴らしいレースをありがとうございました。大きな拍手をお送りください。それでは引き続き表彰式に移りたいと思います。ただいまより Race Together 2021表彰式を行います。優勝は Team Gran Turismo Top Drivers の皆さんです。それではトロフィーの授与を行います。プレゼンターは山内さんです。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。それでは、それぞれ、優勝しました各選手にトロフィーの贈呈をしたいと思います。まずは山中選手から。ありがとうございます。お戻りください。続いて宮園選手お願いします。ありがとうございます。続いて国分選手。 ありがとうございます。ではリュウ選手、おめでとうございます。お戻りください。改めて皆さんに盛大な拍手をお願いいたします。さあ、それでは本日を振り返ってですね、山内さん、そしてミカエルさんからも一言ずつ頂戴したいと思います。ミカエルさん、どうぞお入りください。さあ、まずは山内さん、今日のイベントを振り返ってみて改めていかがですか？
ですね、僕ら過去にテストを繰り返してきたわけですけれども、やっぱり今日のレース次元が違いました。集まっていただいたドライバーの皆さんは、本当に世界でもトップレベルの、チャンピオンを含むドライバーの皆さんなんですけれども、やっぱりそういう本当のすごいドライバーがね、一緒に走ると、こんな景色が見られるんだっていう、だからちょっとレース自体に、感激できました。
印象に残ったのはどんなところですか？シーンとしては。
ですね、もちろん最後の山中選手とソフィーとのこう駆け引きみたいなところも良かったんですけれども、なんて言うんでしょうね、やっぱり瞬間瞬間のこうポジション取りだったり、抜かれたら抜き返すであったりっていうのが、こう一連の動きが全て流れるように流れていって、ソフィーもすごいけど、いやドライバーの皆さんがすごいなって思いました。
すごく自然にハイレベルのレースができてるっていうのがすごかったですね。
いや本当にそうですね、自然でしたね。
ミカエルさんは今日のイベントいかがでしたか
？Yeah, amazing event, amazing race. Thank you to the human pro players to race us in this way. I think basically when I said, we were looking for an amazing race, I think we got amazing races, right? So certainly I was gripped, and so I think like from that perspective, I think it is really the best outcome of the event. Now, of course, there's a lot of back and forth between the players and the AI, and ultimately, of course, congratulations, the humans won. But I think we also, we won 2 races, right? The first and the second one. And so overall, the performance of the AI, I thought was also really, really great. So I'm really happy about the outcome.
ミカエルさん、山内さん、どうもありがとうございます。Race Together 2021、改めまして優勝は Team Gran Turismo Top Drivers の皆さんです。大きな拍手をお送りください。これからのグラントゥリスモソフィーにも期待していきたいと思います。それではまたお会いしたいと思います。See you next time. Goodbye. Thank you.